This this old guy, this old man woke up one morning and discovered that his wife had died. So he called the funeral home, and the funeral home guys came out and put her in a casket and carried her out of the house. And while they were going out the front door, they accidentally bumped the casket against the door frame. And when they did, they heard a low moan come from inside. So they hurried up and they put it down, they opened her up. She was still alive. Got her out of there, she lived another 10 years. And then one day she died again. And her husband called up the funeral home again, and the guys came out and they put his wife in the casket and they were carrying her out of the house, and the old guy said, "Watch out for the door." The moral of that story is, when the body starts to move, the funeral is over. When we are here today because 2,000 years ago the body started to move, yeah? And the funeral is over. And the victory is ours. And Christ is risen. And there's nothing left to do except celebrate that. Today I want to just sort of take a look at one of the most beloved stories of Easter in the Bible. Is the story, we're at just the first part of it. It's a story about two disciples. One of them's named Cleopas, the other, we don't know his name. And it's Easter afternoon. Only except these guys, they don't even know it's Easter yet. They don't know, have no idea what's going on. The only thing they know is that Jesus was ramrodded in the court, that he was put to death, that he was declared dead, that he was put in a hole in the ground with a great big rock in front of it. That's all they know. And that they are walking along, and it says they are going to a town called Emmaus. I think I read this story about 1,000 times before I realized what was really going on here. Why were these two guys going to Emmaus? All the rest of the disciples, they're back at the ranch. They're huddled up together in Jerusalem. Why are these two guys not with the others? Why are they going to Emmaus? And the answer to that is, these guys are hanging it up. They are calling it quits. They have had enough. They've turned in their keys and said, "Thank you very much, don't call us, we'll call you." And they are done. They are quitting. And they're walking along and they're thinking, we thought that this Jesus guy was different. We really thought that Jesus was going to completely change the world. We dedicated our whole lives to following this man. And then the election results came in. And it was Barabbas by a landslide. So, to all that, we really shouldn't have got our hopes up. Shouldn't have got our hopes up. And that is how Easter begins for these guys. And so, my first point this morning is just really simple, and that is we all take that walk. We are all going to take our own walk to Emmaus someday. I mean, we all have our own dark road to go down. I don't have the exact figures. I haven't really kept track, but I think, I'm pretty sure I've done more funerals in the last 3 months than I've done in the last 2 years. Maybe 3. Done a lot. One week I had 3 funerals in 1 week. That's a personal record that I'd rather not break. This might sound like a weirdo thing to say, but I actually really like doing funerals, and it's not because I'm Dracula or nothing. It's just because I like helping people that way, but that's a lot of death. And I thought about a funeral that I did just a couple of weeks ago for an old lady that I didn't know. It's one of the smallest funerals I've ever done. Just a tiny little handful of people there. She just didn't have anybody left. And they told me when she was 16, her mother had died. And then while back her husband died, and before that she and her husband had had one child, and she had died in her 30s. And they said that she used to just sit in the nursing home all the time and say, I wonder why everybody left me here all by myself. That's death. That's an Emmaus walk, huh? Some people's walk to Emmaus is trying to get a job, trying to make ends meet. He's sitting there at the kitchen table, trying to figure out how we're going to pay the bills this month. You ever done this? Try to figure out which ones do we have to pay now, which ones can wait. What can we live without? Can we live without cable or electricity? If you've ever dug coins out of the cushions of your couch to buy groceries, you know what I'm talking about. That's some people. Some people's Emmaus walk is their marriage. Yeah, marriage can be. It start out good. It all starts out good, romantic and sweaty palms and all that. And the wedding day, everything is perfect. Everybody, I don't care who, everybody looks like Prince Charming and Snow White on their wedding day. You stand up there, all you need is just little cartoon birdies dropping flowers on your head, and the scene would just complete. But then sometime in the middle of next month, one of them says the wrong thing at the wrong time about maybe the other one's driving or TV shows. And Prince Charming and Snow White are out the window. And next thing you know, they're telling the funeral home guys to watch out for the door. We all got a dark road we got to go down someday. I remember several years ago, Corinne, my daughter, must have been about 10, I'm not sure, but about 10. I was driving her to school one morning, which, as I recall, was not her idea. She was not in favor of it, as I remember right. And she was grouchy. Nobody can freeze you out like Corinne. And I was trying to cheer her up a little bit. And so I said, you know that every morning after I drop you off at school, did you know that I pray for you every morning? I said, in fact, do you know that I pray for you and your brother 3 times every day? And she said, really? And I said, yes, I do. And she said, well, what do you pray for? And I said, well, I don't know, nothing particular. I just pray that you'll have a good life. And she looked at me and said, you got to pray harder. 10 years old. So my first point is that we all take that walk someday. But my second point is that that's exactly where the risen Christ meets us. The risen Christ comes to us on that very road, right when things are darkest, right when things are the most hopeless. That is precisely where he shows up. These 2 guys are going down the road and they're depressed, and this guy comes up to them. They don't even know who it is. They don't even know it's Jesus, but he comes up to them and he starts to talk to them. And he begins to give them a message of hope. And that's what Easter is about. It's about hope. There's this great old story that all the old preachers tell. I think maybe Billy Graham told this story, but I love this story. It's about a guy who's in a museum, and he's looking at this painting, this big painting that shows 2 men playing chess. One of the men looks kind of ordinary. The other guy is the devil. And they're playing chess, and the ordinary man is down to like his last 2 or 3 pieces on the chessboard, and the devil is smiling. And the title of the painting is Checkmate. And the idea is that all is lost and this is a hopeless situation. But the guy that was looking at this painting was a world-class chess champion. And he just kind of looked at it, and his buddy said, come on, let's go, we got other paintings to look at. And he said, there's something about this painting that is bugging me, and it's going to drive me crazy until I figure out what it is. He stared at it and stared at it and stared at it, and then all of a sudden he said, somebody's got to get a hold of this artist and tell him that he needs to change the title to his painting. Because the title of this painting is Checkmate, but that's wrong. He says that guy's king still has one move left. And if he makes that move, he's going to win the game. He said the king has one move left. And that is the message of Easter. The king has one. Death is not going to have the last word. Sin is not going to have the last word. Evil and hatred and prejudice and war and sickness and disease and loneliness and depression and all that stuff is not going to have the last word. Not in our lives and not in our world, because the king has one move left. Whatever it is that's on your mind today, whatever it is you've been carrying around all week, it's not going to get the last laugh. You know what? They say it's going to snow tomorrow. But winter is not going to have the last word, because it's Easter and the king has one move left, and the king is going to win the game. That's the message of Easter. And this is what this guy's telling these guys on the road. He's kind of preaching to them. He's kind of explaining the scriptures to them, and he tells them the king has one more move. And it says their hearts began to burn. They begin to feel that hope again. But they don't even know that this is Jesus yet. They don't even know who they're talking to. Sometimes, when Jesus comes to us, especially on that dark road, sometimes we don't see him. Sometimes we don't recognize him with our eyes, but he is there. We may not even think he's there at all, but the risen Christ is there. So don't be fooled by what you see or by what you do not see, because the thing about human beings is we have a real way of missing things that are right in front of us. This young woman, her husband was going to be out of town one night. She was going to have the house all to herself, peace and quiet. So she was looking forward to this. She had that day on her calendar. She was counting down the days. And the day came, and she was excited. She still had 2 little kids at home. Still 2 little kids, but they were small enough they could go to bed early. So she put them in bed early, and then she put on her rattiest, ugliest nightgown, the most comfortable one. She put her hair up in rollers. She put a mud mask on her face, and she sat down there and lit one of them smelly candles and just started to relax. And then she heard fighting upstairs. They went upstairs to the kids' room, and she just burst in there, and she said, I want you to know that I've been looking forward to this night for a long time, and you two have just ruined it for me. She said, I want you both to go to bed. I don't want to hear another sound from you for the rest of the night. And she went out of the room and slammed the door shut. And one of the kids looked at the other one and said, who was that? Hey, that's not the best illustration in the world. My preaching professor would give me a D on that one. But sometimes the risen Christ is right in front of us, and we don't recognize him. We don't know that he's there. But he's there, and he is the one who has one move left, and he is the one who was risen, and he is the one who meets us on our darkest road, and that's Easter. There's one other thing that I wanted to mention about this story. One way that we experience the risen Christ very often is through just small acts of kindness. If you are familiar with the story, it goes on, and they finally get to Emmaus, and they come to the place where they're going to stay for the night, and these 2 guys, they invite this guy they think is a stranger, to come stay with them. They want you to come on in. He said, oh, no, I don't want to impose. I don't want. They said, no, come on. It's getting late. It's dark. Come on, stay with us. Well, okay. It's amazing, isn't it? These 2 guys, they might be ready to quit being disciples, but they're still acting like disciples. They bring the guy in, and they invite him to dinner, and they share their food with him. And it says when the bread was broken, their eyes were opened, and they saw for the first time that the risen Christ was in front of them. And that is exactly the same way it works for us. Very often it is in acts of kindness that the risen Christ is revealed. Now, I got to see again the power of this. Just last weekend. Last weekend I was in jail. I do a weekend prison ministry, as you know, called Kairos. And this year I was at a table again, and there was a guy sitting beside me at the table who just really wanted to talk a lot. Talked a lot just to me. And he told me some of his story. And he said, my mother died when I was 10 years old. He said, my dad thought she was cheating on him, so he shot her right in front of me. And I thought to myself, man, I remember when I was a kid how it bothered me just to see my parents argue. And he said that he told me every detail the rest of that day. He remembered every single thing the EMT said. He remembered how they thought that maybe he was wounded too because he was covered in blood from holding his mom. And he just carried that around for years until he became an adult. He found his dad again. And he didn't go into any details this time, but he made it so his dad will be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. And I took it that that was the reason he was in prison. But during the weekend, that man gave his life to Jesus Christ. And not only that, but he forgave his dad in his amazing. And but the interesting thing is what really gets through to these guys is not what you might think. It's lots of times it's the dippy little stuff that we do. Like, for instance, there's one afternoon where we give them a bag of letters. All the guys on the team, about 50 guys in a team, we handwrite a letter for each guy, about 36 letters. And we put them all, they all get a big bag of mail, all in these paper bags, you know. And as a clergy person, I get to be in the room and hand it to them and sit there while they read them. And I've heard this over and over and over again, guys saying, you know, I haven't gotten a single piece of mail since I was put in jail, but today I got mail. And some of them will just devour them, just read them all right there. Some of them just roll it up and put it away. Say, I'll read it later by myself in my cell. This time, something interesting happened that had never happened to me before. I was just sitting there, and this guy got up the other side of the room and crossed the room all the way to me, and he didn't say a word. He just sat down and gave me a hug, and then got up and went back to his seat. I have no idea. But this is kind of what gets through to them. This is the same thing that happened in Emmaus. This small act of kindness. Because these letters are nothing, really. I mean, they're not much. I mean, we have to handwrite them. And then by the time I'm getting to the end of mine, they're illegible. Because I'm just like, get this done. And they're not personal at all because we don't even know who they're going to while we write them. We have to leave it blank and then put their names in later. But this is what helps touch their hearts. A small act, and the risen Christ is there. There's also the cookies. I don't know about the cookies. You've made cookies for me. This weekend, we took in 6,000 dozen homemade cookies into the prison. And I might have told you this before, but I remember my very first Kairos. My wife says that I'm a pessimist. I'm not convinced that I am, but she thinks I am. This guy, I don't think he got an awful lot out of his weekend because he slept the whole entire time. There was one point during one afternoon when he woke up for a little bit, and he looked at the cookies, and he said, where do all these cookies come from? And I said, well, most of them are made by folks back home in our churches. He said, they make them for us? For in here? And I said, that's right. And he said, don't they know we ain't no good? And I said, well, I guess they don't know that. I guess maybe they don't think. The point is that it's Emmaus all over again. The same thing that happened in Emmaus, the small act of kindness and the risen Christ is revealed. I saw the power of this again yesterday, believe it or not. at our egg hunt. We had a pretty good egg hunt, and after the hunt was over, this woman came up to me with 2 little boys, and she said, I just thought you should know how much you made these kids' day today. She said their grandpa has terminal cancer, and they just found this out this morning. And I was trying so hard to figure out something we could do that would be fun, that would get these kids' minds off that for a little bit. And this was just what we needed. She said, thank you so much for doing this. And I thought, that's great, but you know, and it's, again, it's nothing. The Easter egg hunt lasts, I'm not kidding, 10 minutes. It starts at 3 o'clock, it's over by 3:10. And what is it really? Just some cheap plastic eggs and some candy from the dollar store. But a small thing, and there is the risen Christ. So, I want to give us all a challenge this year. I want to give us all a little challenge because, to be quite frankly honest with you, I've been feeling a little bit cynical about Easter this year. That's the truth. I'm having a hard time getting myself motivated to plan Easter this year because I just sort of felt like, you know, when you get down to it, it's just another holiday that comes and goes. Everybody comes and then they forget all about it. And what's the point? So, I want to give you this challenge. It kind of reminds me a little bit of when I was a kid, the first time my mom let me stay up till midnight on New Year's Eve. Stayed up to midnight for the first time on New Year's Eve, and I was excited. You know, I hadn't been up that late before. I never seen the new year come in before. And I remember looking at that digital clock, watching it go down to midnight and counting 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, midnight. And nothing happened. I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but nothing happened. And I looked out the window, and nothing had changed. And I went to bed that night really disappointed. And to be honest with you, I haven't given much of a crap about New Year's Eve ever since. And I feel like Easter is sort of the same thing. You know, it's this nice day. We go to church because there's nothing else to do, and we dress nice and maybe eat some ham, gnaw on a few chocolate bunnies. But I go out and look Monday, and I don't see the new life. I don't see it on Monday. So, a little challenge. I want to challenge all of us to commit random acts of Easter. Like I told you, Easter is a season that lasts 7 weeks or 50 days. I want to challenge all of us for the next 50 days to commit random acts of Easter. I gave you a little business card, maybe you can stick it in your billfold to remind you, because Monday, I already can't remember what happened in church Sunday, to remind you. And I've had, it doesn't have to be anything big. I've had longer to think about this than y'all have. So I came up with a few ideas I put on the back of your bulletin. Just a few, simple. Invite someone to lunch after church. Send flowers for no reason other than just because. Listen to someone who just needs to talk. Seek out someone you have heard and ask for forgiveness. This is one we could do before we get home today. Leave a huge tip for your waitress or waiter or pastor. Write a note of encouragement. I wanted to be sure I still had you. I'm not going to read the whole thing. That'll be my act of kindness today. But if you can think of any more good ones, let me know, and I'll add them to the list. Or I really hope that you'll do this. I really, really hope that you'll do this, and I hope that if you do something neat, I know you're not going to want to brag about it, but I hope you'll tell me, because I would like to share some of these things anonymously, and we're gonna talk about this for the next several weeks. And I really, really kind of hope that we can make Easter more than just one day, that we can bring the risen Christ into this world through small, simple, random acts of Easter. All right. Let's all stand and sing the closing hymn.